Thank you all. Continue those conversations after class because right now we have a great class planned, and it is my pleasure to introduce Jack Greninger, who is going to be introducing our speaker. So take it away from the podium.
Thank you. Test. Hello, guys. Can you guys give me just one clap? Just give me a clap. Okay. That was good. That was a little bit chaotic, though. Okay? I feel like that's the world without leadership. Okay? Now we're going to clap in 3, okay? 3, 2, 1. That was incredible. Wow. This example is supposed to demonstrate how Ryan Petersen used leadership to improve the world with a company. He took the 1,000 or sometimes 109 steps in the process that it takes to ship something from one place to another, and he improved the UX of the world. Okay, I'm Jack Greninger. I'm introducing Ryan Petersen, the founder and CEO of Flexport. Okay, I want to say that in 2002, Ryan Petersen was sitting in these seats. Okay, not exactly these seats, but very similar ones in UC Berkeley. He was walking the halls, okay? He was walking up and down Sproul Hall. He looked up at the campanile, right, as he walked to and from class. And then after that, he went and he built a company that changed the world, okay? He learned here, he dreamed here, and then he created one of the most successful YC companies in the world, okay? Not only did he get into YC, okay, but today they put it on the front page of the YC website. You can look it up right now if you want. But they say, hey, when you make a company, make it like this. Okay, this is what you do to build things that people want. Flexport's mission was very simple and bold. It was to fix the user experience in global trade. It wasn't just moving boxes, but it was to make trade easy, clear, and fair. Ryan did it. Ryan got into Y Combinator in the winter of 14 with Flexport, which was, by the way, the very last batch that Paul Graham was leading right before he handed it off to Sam Altman. Ryan sat with Paul Graham for days after days, learning from him, and he learned how to scale Flexport. Then Flexport raised $1 billion, led by SoftBank at a $3.2 billion valuation, and then later raised $935 million at an $8 billion valuation. Ryan did it. He started importing and exporting at age 17. Later, he founded Import Genius. That was right before Flexport. That was early hustle. That was something that you and I could both do after leaving this room. He took, with Import Genius, his first business, which was very successful, he did something that you and I could both do. He didn't have any advantage. He took publicly accessible data about customs shipping, and he organized it in the right way, and he sold it. Nothing special. He just created value. He turned 1,000 confusing steps into a clear, trusted path for customers. Ryan did it. So I want you to remember that in 2002, this is why you should listen to Ryan. In 2002, Ryan sat in these seats and he walked past the campanile every day while going to class. Then he built a $1 billion company and completely changed and improved the way that the world worked and that things move. Tonight, he's telling you the exact playbook for everything that he did. Ryan did it, and you can too. You can too. Please join me in welcoming Ryan Petersen.
That was fantastic, Jack.
Okay, are we doing it with the mirror computer, which is down here? Yeah.
I think you pulled my transcripts there. You had a class. How did you know I took that class? Portuguese for romance speakers. Great class. I hope they still offer that here at Berkeley. So yeah, I think the way we're going to do this, I do have some slides. If you want the full takeaway, though, you're going to have to put it in ChatGPT, and I'm sure the transcript will come out and spit it out the summary. There's no text on my slides, so I'm not going to. I don't know if you have homework. Do you have homework? You'll be fine. You'll be fine. As Jack mentioned, so I went to Berkeley, class of 2002. It's great to be back on campus, although I was here on Saturday for the football game. So, but it is great to come back. I've got this map of China up here. When I graduated from Cal, although it was kind of the end of the dot-com bust, and there weren't a lot of jobs in the world, so the only job that I could get was working for my older brother, who was importing motorcycles and dirt bikes, scooters. We also had a line, he was showing it. There was a picture of a shower up there. We imported all kinds of things, including showers, walk-in bathtubs. We used to run commercials at night. So that was, we were a startup, but we never used that word. We didn't know about startups or venture capital or anything. We were just trying to make money. Our idea was very simple. We would buy things, mostly in China, sell them on the internet. And we were quite good at internet marketing, selling stuff. Now you call it direct-to-consumer. And so we had this business, and I moved to China because, well, I when I was at Cal, I got to study abroad in South America, and I learned Spanish, I learned Portuguese, and we were making money shipping stuff from China, but none of us had ever been there. The whole business was enabled by the internet. We were buying stuff online, and we would go to China. We would never go to China. We would just buy it online from like strangers on the internet, sell it on the online in the US. It worked, but I realized it could be a lot better if we had boots on the ground. So I moved to China. This was in 2005, a few years after school. And with the idea of learning Chinese, managing supply chain, and just digging into this problem of like what we quickly learned was a real problem. It was very hard to import stuff. But before I get into all that, while I was in China, this was, again, 2005, I found this book. Anybody read this book out here? This is a great book. It's called Poor Charlie's Almanac, one of my favorite books. And there's an essay in here, which is the essay's online, called The Art of Worldly Wisdom. And I highly recommend everybody go read this essay when I get out of here. I'm going to give you one of my takeaways right now. Is go read this essay by Charlie Munger. It was actually a speech that he gave at USC at their graduation of advice for young people. And what he says is that to be worldly wise, that there's only about call it 100 disciplines in the world, and each one there's 2 or 3 ideas that carries 80% of the freight for that whole discipline. So in biology, it's probably Darwinian evolution and something around genetics. And if you get those 2 things down, you know maybe there's something really hard in OChem around protein folding or something. I don't know. But you get those 2 big ideas, you get 80% of the value of that whole discipline. And there's probably only 100 disciplines. There's 200 or 300 ideas in the world. And if you know all of those, you should seek to know all of them to be worldly wise. It gives you a lot of mental models, a lot of frameworks to hang things on. And one of the secrets to innovation in this world is taking a big idea from one discipline, and it turns out it's relevant in a neighboring discipline, or people in that discipline had never thought through that mental model. And so I learned this book. I found this book when I was living in China. Books were very scarce in China. When I sort of made it through Berkeley and high school and everything else without doing a lot of reading. I mean, I would read the books I was assigned in class, but never read anything beyond that. I wasn't really that much into reading. And then in China, where English books were very scarce at that time. I think now that you can get whatever books you want over there, but at that time it was very hard to come across books in the English language. And so when I found them, they were like precious. And somehow I got this book while I was living in China. And that set me off to go try to learn all the disciplines. I have not succeeded yet, sadly, in learning the big ideas from every discipline. There's probably some more out there. But it set me off on learning. So I tell the story now. One, I think it's useful advice for you guys to go after, try to be worldly wise, try to learn more about areas that, and you're blessed to be here at Cal, where you can go take a class in one of these random disciplines. I think I ended up with I graduated with 180 credits. I think you only need 120 to graduate, right? So like I overdid it, and in that pursuit. But I never. And so, anyways, I was at a party about 10 years ago here in San Francisco, and there's this older guy there. He's like 70 years old, and it's he and I both didn't know anybody at this party. So I started talking to him, and he asked me what my favorite book was. And I said, it's Poor Charlie's Almanac. And I told him what I just told you about how it set me off on like this intellectual journey to try to go become worldly wise. And I kept telling him why this book was so great. He kept asking me more questions about why I liked it or whatever. And then he's like, so I have to tell you, I know that book really well. I wrote the book. And the guy I was talking to was Peter Kaufman. And so it was this and that became, Peter's become a great mentor of mine, someone that I learned from a lot. He's Charlie Munger's best friend. So I was lucky, Munger passed away last year, but I got to go to his 99th birthday party last year, a few months before he passed. And I would go to dinner at Charlie Munger's house every few months for the last probably 5 years of his life. And Charlie told me one thing that really stood, I mean, he told me a lot of things, but the one thing that really stood out to me is when I told him about Flexport, about my company, he said, "Oh, you have a great business because the key to success is dumb competition." And I think there's something in that you guys can all take away too. I meet a lot of people who are doing like AI startups, trying to change the world and as we all should. But you have to be careful that if you're doing an AI startup, then your competitors are also doing AI startups, and therefore they're by definition geniuses. And you have not solved this first condition of like try to make sure you're competing with people who are not geniuses. And there's lots and lots of areas. And so it's much better to do an AI startup focused on some domain, going into an area that doesn't have that level of talent, that maybe is in physics, you want to take, if you want maximum energy transfer, you take something really, really hot and put it in an area in something that's frozen, and you'll get maximum energy transfer. And so, I take that from Charlie, is try to be worldly wise and look out areas of opportunity. Oh, I just noticed that lady in the mirror. That's kind of creepy. But long before all of that, this is one of the products that I was selling when I was buying this scooter in China and selling it on the internet. Back then, it was Amazon existed, but you couldn't sell your products on Amazon. It was only their own stuff. eBay was the place back in early 2000s. And this we sold a lot of products, but I picked this one out. This was made by a company called Geely. Do we have anybody from China in the audience? Geely is the Chinese car company that bought Volvo, one of the biggest Chinese car companies. We were their first dealer in the United States before. I didn't even know they made cars back then. They made this very, very crappy motor scooter. That thing looks cute. It pollutes 5 times more than a car. So yes, and it breaks down maximum lifetime, no matter how many spare parts you put on this thing, it'll only go about 500 kilometers. I still have guilt on my conscience for selling these things on the internet. And it's kind of a testament to how far China has come, is like, to look at this. I should have that photo. You look up Geely's latest sports car, it'll blow your mind how far they've come from in the last 20 years, from when I was living there till now. So this is where I discovered the problems, though, I guess kind of 2 core problems in any business are supply and demand. And in our case, supply side, we're like, okay, we have Geely. They weren't making great products back then, but it was passable. And we had some other suppliers that were actually much better than them then. I think Geely probably surpassed them all over time. But we had the supply side reasonably solved, although we weren't differentiated. Anybody could call Geely and buy that bike, and we had competitors who bought the exact same bike from them that we bought. And then on the demand side, we were pretty good in internet marketing, but we didn't really own our channel. We were selling on eBay and on our own website we owned, but on eBay we didn't own. So the business was like, okay, it wasn't. It only survived because we hustled. We out-hustled everybody. We outworked everybody. We out-learned everybody in our space. And but I came away feeling like actually the biggest problems that we found were shipping the thing. Like, we got it made here. We do have customers. We have a factory. We have customers. And now getting it from that factory to those customers just encountered sort of a nightmare of people ripping us off, lack of technology, no user interface at all. The user interface back then was the phone and lots of emails and fax machines, paper documents, etc. And so it was actually in doing this business that I discovered the idea for Flexport. There's some stuff on between, but we only have a little bit of time here, so I'll skip over some of the other steps of my career. And I'm not going to walk you through all these, but these are some for those, whoever that was looking for a slide. There's the text. Your takeaways. Global logistics is kind of a mess from the user standpoint. Just like people trying to rip you off, lack of tech. It would be the simple way to put it. Oh, and they treat you like you're an idiot. So when someone's ripping you off and treating you like you're stupid, it's the worst. And I went through this pain for many, many years. We ran that company from basically, they started even before I graduated Cal, so it was like 2000 or so until I started Flexport in 2013. So I had a lot of exposure to this problem before I decided to go and fix it. And so it's a very big problem, and it's a very important problem. This is a graph of global trade from, it says the Islamic Golden Age, from 1000 AD till the present. And you'll see there's been some ups and downs. You had the Mongol invasions, you had the Black Death. Actually, there should be a spike. The Mongol invasions actually led to more trade for a while. Black Death, Age of Exploration, right? Industrial Revolution. It's a hockey stick. And what's very interesting on this is a log scale. So if you have an exponential growth on a log scale, that means if you actually put this on a linear scale, it would be a straight vertical line of the amount of trade in the world. So it's huge, obviously very big. Just recently in 2024, global trade was 60% of global GDP. 60 cents for every dollar transacted on the planet is an international trade transaction. So it's a huge problem. And many, many people have experienced this problem. And it's foundational to our human nature. This is a quote from Adam Smith. Do we have any economics majors here? A few, right? You don't study Adam Smith anymore, is my understanding. But you should go read this book. It's about 1,000 pages long, is why they don't have time for it in a college class. But he has this great quote. And it's really, I think there's something foundational here. We have scientists, philosophers are always trying to say what's different about humans than animals. And they'll come up with all kinds of things, language or tool use or these different things, but those keep failing. There's lemurs that can speak and there's crows that can use tools. But as Adam Smith said, you've never seen two animals conduct trade. And there's something foundational about that because this is also where wealth comes from. There's two people, specialization, two people exchanging I'm good at making this, you're good at making that, and we exchange it, and we both get a little bit richer from that process. So it's something really fundamental about humanity. It's how we've built on the shoulders of giants, built up our modern civilization. And yeah, as I said, it's super broken. And so that juxtaposition for me just really jumped out. And it took a long time. I was a victim of what Paul Graham's the founder of YC. I'm sure most of you know Paul Graham if you're in this, interested in entrepreneurship. But founded Y Combinator, and he has this wonderful essay called Schlepp Blindness up there. Schlepp is a Yiddish word for an arduous journey. And in the essay he writes about Schlepp blindness is when there are problems that are so big that you can't make your conscious brain actually even think about the problem. You're just totally blind to it. You ignore it altogether. This is probably, from a evolutionary psychology perspective, it's probably so you don't have to think about death all day because you wouldn't be able to get anything done if you actually thought about how horrifying that is, that we're all going to die. But we're all victims of this, of victims of Schlepp blindness. In the essay, he writes about Stripe, the payments company, that anyone who ever sold anything on the internet before Stripe, so that is every single internet entrepreneur, by the way, we all tried to take people's money. Anyone who ever sold anything had to go through this horrible process. I can tell you about it. I used to do this. You had to apply through your bank to be allowed to take payments. I mean, this is like, now you just create a Stripe account. You can go maybe fill out some KYC stuff. But you had to apply for your bank. It was months before in a paper application, months before they would approve it. Then you had to go through this thing called authorize.net. It's like a payment gateway that had no API documentation, it was just a complete nightmare to try to integrate this in your e-com site. And yet every single entrepreneur in the world went through that process and then went about it, in our case, like selling scooters on the internet, instead of realizing like there's this, what's Stripe worth now? $100 billion. There's a $100 billion opportunity that 100% of internet entrepreneurs prior to 2008 ignored. And Paul's latest example of this is Flexport. Is sort of anyone who ever imported anything, went through the pain, those slides that I showed you, saw how this was killing their business, that the stuff was not arriving on time, they're ripping you off, holding your goods for hostage at the port until you paid hidden fees that they didn't tell you about. And then we all went about our ways and started, just doing our crappy online business. And so I too was victim of that until at some point I kind of woke up and realized, like, man, this is a crazy big opportunity. I should go build software for it. In fact, one of the things that changed was the two big changes, actually, before I get here. Two big changes were the government changed the rules. Back in 2007, the rule changed to allow companies to file customs entries remotely. You used to have a license in each port in the United States. So that was a huge change. That happened in 2007. I learned about it in 2008. So that was like when I first started thinking about the idea for Flexport was 2008. And the other thing was that you had the rise of Web 2. Now you have Web 3, but Web 2.0, which was basically JSON. It was back then what do we call it? Ajax. It's basically allow you to load components within a web page rather than having to refresh the entire page. Stuff that you take for granted, but wasn't possible before around 2008. And it made for the modern kind of rich web applications that they're possible now that were pretty clunky pre-2008. And so I saw examples of that being built and realized, like, man, this would be great if you had an application that would manage this customs process. So I put those two things together, again, combining ideas from different disciplines, bring the latest web technology, something that was really hot, into this very stale and boring industry. And now, okay, so that was the first idea, first thing for Flexport. You got started and quickly realized why it was so broken and why it was so hard is that there's a lot of steps in the process. If you want to import something from another country, this is a highly, highly simplified version. There's actually hundreds of steps that someone has to complete. At one point, we broke it down. There were 984 tasks that a human being was having to complete. It took us like 5 years to do that study, by the way, because no one even talked about these tasks. They were just implicit knowledge in people's heads. But at a high level, you've got these steps that need to be completed by as many as 11 different companies in the chain. I knew about none of this. I was just coming at it from the customer experience, being like, I'm tired of getting ripped off. So we opened up a can of worms that we've now spent the better part of 15 years, basically, trying to unpack this, building the global network and solving this problem. And it's really a series of chicken and egg problems. We start, if you want to sell freight, you got to have cheap freight. But if you don't have it, how do you get cheap freight? Is you got to sell a lot of freight. And this is a lot of startups are like this. Almost every startup at some point has this chicken and egg problem. It might just be as simple as, how do I get a co-founder? I saw someone saying they wanted me to CTO. How do you get a co-founder? It's like, how do you get a CTO? Have an awesome company and the CTO will want to join you. But how do you make an awesome company without a CTO? It's a classic problem in entrepreneurship. In our case, we were lucky in that, well, there's a lot of luck involved in any successful business, but in our specific case of that freight chicken and egg problem is that I don't need to have the freight on day one. I don't need to have the low rates on day one. I can talk to these two sides in parallel. And I remember this, we went to the biggest watchmaker in the world, and we got their head of supply chain. I think he replied to a spam email that we sent them. Which is working less and less, but we got him to agree to meet with us, and we got out a whiteboard, and we gave him a marker, and we asked him to draw his ideal command center for his supply chain. So what would you like it to look like? Draw a map. He made these dots that would show all of his shipments, and then they would turn red if they were going to be more than 3 days late. And so we came back a month later, and we coded that. We'd been like, all right, here's your command center. Here's how it'll be. And it looks a little bit like this. This is actually a new version of Flexport's app that's coming, but it hasn't changed that much. And yeah, you see these red ones are slightly different logic, but you can customize that. He could make it. But he came back to us and said, wow, you turned me into a computer programmer. I got to ship some freight with you guys. But you have, all right, so if you hit this price, I'll give you 200 containers worth of freight, which at the time was like a huge amount of freight. Now we'll move a few 100,000 containers a year, but at the time it was like mind-blowing, like 200 containers, let's go. The only problem was the rate that he wanted was about double what we had ever negotiated, or about half of what we had ever negotiated. So which we didn't tell him. We're like, oh yeah, no problem. So then we had a price though, and he wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. It was just like regular, kind of in line with market. So then we went back to the ocean carriers, the people that own the ships, and said, "Hey, if you can give me this price, like we were cool. You want to help us out? We're at just a market price. If you give me that price, I'll bring 200 containers." And they said, "Sure, let's do it." We went back to him and we got the price. So that's how we got our initial get things going. But it started with leading with tech, leading with a new way of seeing, like a new user experience, a better way to solve the problem, get them excited, and then turned around to kind of create this two-sided marketplace. We've evolved, and now we're building out data sets that let you see every string. You want to connect any two port pairs in the world, we'll show you all the different routing options. We've been at the center of a lot of storms. This was me on CNN a couple of weeks ago because of the trade war. We've got this like tariff simulator that'll show you how much it's going to cost you if you're an entrepreneur. Millions of examples of how we can build tech, but actually this core entrepreneurial foundation never changes, in that we launch new products, we got to get customers to use it, and if the customers don't use it, there's no supply side. In our logistics industry, it's a network-driven industry, so we've got to get both sides to love the thing to drive scale. And so that's been, now we're 12, I've said a few different dates here. 2008 is when I first started working on the idea. 2013, we got our license. 2014, our first revenue. So we're now about 10 years in. And we've kind of got three simple ways to think about the business. The tech is on the top, and the tech is how we lead and how we get customers, but it's not enough. I already mentioned you've got to have the scale. You got to have, that's kind of part of what I put down in this network. You've got to be able to physically move goods between any two places in the world. That scale game, it's not enough just to move lots of containers, which we do. We move barely any containers from China to Australia on that trade lane. We have to do it all over again. Go get Australian companies to work with us, and Chinese. We have like 400 people in China and 1 person in Australia, and we've got to go connect each country to every other country and keep running that game. So that goes into the network piece, and then talent. It all starts with the people, with a culture of entrepreneurial people that are hustling, that want to work really hard, that like to solve problems, that are out here. And our competition, I said the key to success is dumb competition. Key to failure is arrogance, by the way. So I didn't say that. Charlie Munger said that. I don't think our competitors are dumb. I think that they were founded 100 years ago, and so they struggle to catch up with the latest tech and put it to work. And it's very hard, even for us. We've got tech debt, and we're constantly overcoming that. And I am paranoid that there's some of you out here building AI systems that are going to make a lot of our tech irrelevant, and we'll be just like them. But what they have that's a huge advantage over us is this network. So our biggest competitor has 2,000 offices around the world. They've got offices in every country. And by the way, these guys only have 3% market share. There's dozens of companies like this that are in every country with local people that can solve your problem. I even referred a friend recently to a competitor because they were shipping semiconductors, like a data center, to Saudi Arabia. And our competitor has 1,000 employees in Saudi Arabia. I have 0. So I just know I care about his business. I'm like, it's fine, ship, go to them. They'll probably do a better job. And so that's going to take a long time to go replicate and build out a global network that compares with our competition. And then the talent piece, I think we got younger, smarter, hungrier people. We've made logistics interesting for folks that maybe wouldn't have considered it before, that we're a backstage pass to the global economy. Global logistics is an awesome place to learn about the world, and it's almost like an MBA. But it's we are very inexperienced compared to the competition. Our leading competitor was founded in 1890, and they got people who know how to ship freight with a telegram. That's before the telephone, much less the internet. And there's some real advantages to that. Logistics, a world of exceptions and edge cases and problems that you've seen the movie before. So they've got tenured people in every seat. I think we got hungrier, harder working, smarter people, but it's a real advantage, that experience. So, and we don't have 20 years to wait. So we got to figure out, we're investing hard in like culture and learning and development, training, and hiring smarter people, learning faster, having more of a sense of urgency. But we definitely don't take success for granted. Like, we still have a long ways to go. I still feel like it's day one almost at Flexport. We feel like our tech is like leaps and bounds. I mean, I barely skimmed the surface here of what you can do with tech and didn't show you examples of AI demos and stuff that it's going to be amazing. And it is already, we're automating like crazy some of the manual work of the industry, et cetera. But on these bottom two pillars, that's the fun part, actually. Going around the world, building teams. We have offices in 20 countries now, trying to go launch 6 more next year. In fact, I got a couple folks from Flexport in the front row are opening Indonesia, Vietnam, India, guys that are moving around the world for us to help launch these countries. And so that's part of why when you come talk at Berkeley is convince more people to come work here. And the key is, I think, this is a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Notice it says flexport.org. This was us during the middle of the pandemic. Arnold was a delivery guy for Flexport, delivering. And one of the things that we've done, I think that's a little very different than our competitors, is build flexport.org, build this group to do humanitarian logistics and show that we have these superpowers, really bake that into our culture of who we are as a company, trying to give back to the world, give back and solve problems that are really important. Often we just ship cardboard boxes, and it's interesting. I promise you it's more interesting than it might sound. But during the pandemic and during different crises, like most recently in the Pacific Palisades fire, delivering for people who are actually like in a time of need, it's been a huge way that we attract people and retain talent and get people to go all in and feel like it's an amazing place. So just to give you a sense of where we are, and I'll wrap it here. I want to take some questions. Those are the blue countries are where we ship freight last year in 2024, 147 countries, but we only have offices on those little black dots. So you can see the problem that we have relative to our competition, that they shipped freight. I don't really care about the gray ones unless if someone's from, what is that? Namibia, I apologize. But otherwise, I feel like there's enough blue on the map, but there's not enough black dots. And if you're shipping to and from a country where we don't have any employees and no one knows what's going on, things often go astray. So that's where we sit as a big problem to solve. So I'd love to stop there and say, maybe end with the vision, the big picture of when the Industrial Revolution started 100 years ago or so, not when it started, but 100 years ago, when it was really taking off, when it was reaching escape velocity, every company needed to have its own power plant. It's a really interesting aspect of corporate history, that every company had to have a coal-fired generator in the back of the factory, and they would shovel coal into this thing and generate their own electricity. And now we just take it for granted. I'm probably going to short-circuit everything here, but if I press this button, well, I don't know how the lights work here. But there you go, yeah. When I press these buttons, I'm actually controlling a power plant. Are you doing that for me, or he's doing it for me? He's controlling a power plant. It's generating a little more electricity on demand just for you. It's one of the most complex systems in the universe, is the electrical grid. We take it for granted every day that it's there for you on demand. I mean, if you're from a country that doesn't have great power, it's like a miracle of modern civilization that we take for granted, and that allows you to now build a company without needing to run a power plant. The same is true when I was starting out 25 years ago in tech, building websites. You had to run your own IT provision. You had to get your own hardware and run computers and build your website. It was hosted in our office, and worry about the bandwidth constraints. And it was like half of your startup budget if you were in a real tech company was doing that. We just did it ourselves, me and my brother. But now we take for granted. You have AWS, serverless, and everything you can do there. I think that is the opportunity that we see in logistics. Is today every single company has this bureaucratic logistics department kind of pushing paper and making decisions they have no business making, that they don't have all the data at their fingertips. They don't know every single possible ship in the world, what's the best way to route this cargo, every plane. They don't have the best algorithms for loading containers, for for automating the workflow, for making this pain-free. And so we think that's the opportunity for us over the next decade is do what the electrical grid first did to the factory system in this country, what Amazon, AWS, and other cloud providers did to the IT world. I think that's the opportunity that's there to be done right now in logistics. So that's my pitch for Flexport. And I'd love to hear, I don't know what's your format for taking Q&A, but I'd love to, maybe Marcus asked me a question backstage, but somebody else could ask. Yeah, go ahead. You got your hand up.
Yeah, well, I actually just wanted to say thank you, and
thanks.
we'll clap later on. But you all don't know this, and you don't know this, but I actually use some things that you talk about to inspire your the people that you work with, your employees, even more than your business. So just FYI, Ryan has some really interesting thoughts on motivating people who work with him too. So there you go. All right. On that note, Taiba and Haley will be passing around the microphones. If you could introduce yourself, your name, and maybe what you're studying or something about yourself. So take it away, you all.
Hi, I'm Sanjoli. I'm an economics major. I love that you talked about, like, one thing that really stood out to me was you said that one of the secrets to innovation is taking a big idea from one discipline and applying it somewhere else. And I also love that you talked about kind of your future for like the next decade and things like that. But I was curious as to like looking forward as well, how do you adapt to changing technologies and a changing world quickly so you're still disruptive in the market and you're on top of your game while at the same time trying to account for those bigger things like not having a network and how you're planning on building forward?
Yeah. Paranoia, I think, was it Gordon Moore that wrote? No, it's, who wrote Only the Paranoid Survive? Andy Grove, Intel founder, Only the Paranoid Survive. I think you have to be really good at following what's happening with your competition or in adjacent markets. You know, these foundational AI companies are not our competition. They're mostly our friends, they're our vendors, but we've got to stay really close to that. I'm obsessed with competitors who know something that we don't know or can do something we can't do, and I totally ignore the rest. I don't care about competitors. I don't believe it's not a zero-sum game. We can all win, but if they know something that we don't know, they know how to use some tech, build something, deploy some tech, have some capability, like I pointed out a few that I think our existing competitors have, and be really open to ideas wherever they might come from. Like you can't have this pride of like, oh, we have to build everything ourselves. But I think, I didn't even really talk about it, but in AI world, we're gonna be one of the big beneficiaries of this. We already are seeing this because you need a lot to succeed in deploying AI in the enterprise, like in business. You want to have lots of proprietary data to fine-tune models. They don't just work out of the box. Like for example, one of the hard problems that we've been wrestling with, where AI has made breakthroughs for us in the last year, that we wrestled with for a decade before, was digitizing freight contracts. They come in these Microsoft Excel files with like 12 tabs and thousands of rows, and the format's different, and you can tell by looking at these files that they were created by a human, not extracted from a database. Like people are hand editing the rates. So that means the formats can change. They're the same company doesn't have the same format week to week, much less trade lane to trade lane. You know, it's like just very hard problem for a traditional kind of parser to ingest writing scripts. We made progress, but we would basically only focus on the 90% of, there were like, I don't know the numbers exactly, but call it 100 contracts that we moved 80% of our freight on, and we would just focus on really dialing that. But we did not focus on the long tail within that, the next 500 contracts, and then we didn't go out and source contracts unless we had freight. Whereas now with AI, now you can't just give this contract to ChatGPT and get a result. You have to, but we've managed to basically torture ChatGPT and get into giving us the result, and actually into generating code that, you know, on the fly that can then, the code can get the result. So, okay, so you need to have good data. You need to have domain experience. Like, how would you even know about that problem if you were just doing AI? Like being in the game, so the domain experience of knowing where to apply it, that probably, actually, I do think there's a startup out there that's trying to build what I just described as a business. I'm very skeptical. More power to them. I hope it works for them. But I'm kind of skeptical that little problem is a big enough thing to build a whole business around. But there's a lot of value there. And we can kind of cherry pick. If you look from wherever the goods are made all the way to where they're delivered, we can cherry pick and find where do I find use cases that are worth just attacking, even though it's not a whole business. So you have domain experience and the ability to kind of like go solve problems anywhere in the chain. And then lastly, maybe there's even other advantages, but another one is distribution. So when we build some tech using AI or otherwise, but when we build some new way to use AI, the next day we can roll it out to thousands of enterprises. Whereas an AI startup will have to, these guys who are building, I don't even remember their name, but building contract digitization using AI, they got to go beg people for contracts, beg them to sign an enterprise deal, beg them to trust them with their data. And you're like, we just build it and deploy it. So actually, these are all advantages that any incumbent business will have. One of the big debates is who's going to benefit in AI. Is it an incumbent that's been around a long time and has those things I just described of data, domain experience, distribution, but the traditional incumbent doesn't have the technology stack and the technology talent and the culture to go like actually do those things. So I think we're right at the sweet spot of like young enough, age-wise as a company, not our staff, although yes, also you're younger than average, but young enough to have the right tech to take advantage, but at scale. If you look, I should have included that slide in there. Of the top 100 freight forwarders in the world, Flexport's the only one founded after 1994, which is when Netscape came out with the web browser. So yeah, but we're trying to avoid hubris and arrogance, is probably the better answer. I'll try to go faster on the next question. Who's out here? Whoever, you can just choose whoever has the mic, you can decide.
Does anyone on this side have a question?
And then maybe go ahead and give the mic to the next person so we can, okay, you'll be after.
Here you go, Carson. Thanks. Hi. So my name's Carson, and I'm curious. You attract great young talent. When you were in their shoes, it sounds like you realized you would learn most by building yourself. So how do you create a runway for them to maximize their growth and attract them to come work for you?
Yeah. When I was at Berkeley, I wasn't really interested in startups and entrepreneurship, to be honest. I wasn't exposed to it. No one told me about it. I was living in South America doing travel. I majored in economics, but only because in my senior year, I realized I didn't have a major. I took 6 economics classes and just to graduate. So I was more dabbler. My big question at that time was, why are some countries so poor? Now my question is, I invert that. It's a much more interesting question. Why are some countries so rich? The default state is poverty. But at that time, I grew up in a suburb of Washington, D.C. It's a wealthy place. And I'd lived in El Salvador and Chile and Brazil, and I'd seen this poverty and been like, what's going on? And so I was very interested in that. It turns out no one will pay you to do that kind of work, really. So I couldn't find a job. And the only person who would give me a job was my older brother doing startups. So that's how I got into it. It wasn't this premeditated thing. I wish it would have been. I think Cal's entrepreneurship culture is 1,000x better than it was 20 years ago. What do we do? How would I encourage? I think actually, if you want to do a startup, a lot of people want to do startups. How many people want to start a startup here? Wow, a lot, yeah. It's very hard, certainly in the enterprise. You don't have, no offense to you, but it's very hard to have the experience to have seen what are the problems that businesses have unless you've lived them. That's why you have these, the trope of the 18-year-old founder is real. I mean, Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and stuff, but they were basically doing consumer kind of startups because they understood the problem of the user that they were going to try to go solve. So how do you get exposure? If you want to do a startup, you got to get exposure to problems that you can solve. And the problem with consumer problems is that every other human on the planet has those problems and has already thought of a lot of solutions. So your competition is sort of everybody in the world. Now, I do believe that mass slept blindness is reality. Like, we're all blind. There are certain problems that I can't believe that people just put up with. So letting yourself get pissed off and being annoying to be around because you're just getting pissed off at things that everyone else doesn't care about because they took it for granted and don't care and they're living in slept blindness. We're just chatting with her. Like, one of the ones that's pissing me off recently is if you do business travel, you have to wear a suit sometimes, and then you have to get your suit steamed. And you guys are in college, you don't have to worry about this, but like someday you have to steam your clothes. It's insane. The steamers do not work. Like, this whole process is insane. I can't believe it's why it's so hard to escape the middle class, I swear, because you got to spend hours steaming your clothes. So someone needs to fix that. So that would be my advice on if you want to start a startup, is like, find problems. And so, yeah, I think often it's joining a really interesting company is a better path to finding problems to go solve. Within Flexport, I think, it's a hard problem that we wrestle with a lot, because like a lot of the logistics work that we have to do is like actually quite interesting, because you get to meet these companies that we ship for and figure out how they work and solve problems for them. But it's also on some level, like, by definition, you're doing the same thing a little bit, try to get better at it every time. But if they made money on that shipment, they're going to want to do another shipment and do it again. So we have to create a lot of opportunity for growth through rotations, to learning new skills. It can't just be, there's not enough room at the top there's only one CEO, right? So there's not enough room for everyone to become the CEO. But creating a lot of opportunity for you to move around the company, whether that's geographically or functionally. A lot of career paths, people have moved into, start in an operations role and move into product, move into engineering, writing code, but more common is software design, global expansion, help us launch new markets that I've been alluding to. So there's a million opportunities, actually, but we're trying to build that balance between, like, you got to pay your dues, you got to learn by doing, solve problems day to day. And we need smart people. I think one of the things that our competitors do is they just hire someone who's happy to do the same job over and over again for the rest of their life. And I don't really want to be around those kind of people. So we want people who are like, split themselves in half and do this job, but then half of their brain is looking back and going, hey, how could I make this job better? How could I improve this job? That's been our path. I said I was going to go faster. And then, yeah, someone else go next after that. Great, you guys are on it.
Hi, my name is Nat. Thank you so much for being here. I wanted to say that you speak in a way that's very relaxed and like effortless.
Yeah.
And it seems like you're just talking to your friends, which makes it like very engaging as an audience member. So I'm curious, besides for the billions of dollars in revenue and the drinking, apparently, what fuels your self-confidence?
Oh, I don't drink.
Okay. What's fueling your self-confidence? What gives you that like assurance that allows you to present yourself as a competent person?
Yeah, it doesn't come naturally, actually. I used to be a very nervous public speaker. I think that's very, very normal. Throughout human history, if you were standing in front of a large group of people like that, there's only two reasons. One, you were their leader, or two, they were about to kill you. And it was much more likely the latter. They were about to kill you. So fear of public speaking is like baked into your DNA, and you can only overcome that by doing it a bunch. So find ways to exposure therapy. Get yourself in front of large groups. Jack did a great job. He's a better public speaker than me. Brought the energy. So yeah, maybe be like Jack. Volunteer to introduce your next speaker or something. Yeah, well, Latin America is a very diverse place. So they're not, the problems are different based on the country. But you're from Mexico. Your biggest problem is the mountains, and it's a very mountainous country. The United States has more navigable rivers than the rest of the world combined. Navigable rivers, inland waterways. You count the Great Lakes and the network that goes up into Canada, and God didn't give Mexico a single navigable river, not one, is a very weird coincidence, or a very weird fact of geography, rather. So that hurts Mexico's ability to develop in a lot of ways. Trucking is very expensive. You know, right now people are like, "Oh, we're going to do nearshoring. We'll set up factories in Mexico." That's good from a speed standpoint. You can truck things. What part of Mexico are you from? From Puebla, yeah. I think a truck from Puebla to here would probably, how long does it take to drive there? 5 days or something? Probably 5 days. But that's reasonable. A ship from Vietnam will take you 3 weeks, 18 days or something like that. But guess what? The ship from Vietnam to here is cheaper than the truck from Puebla to here. So it's water is just a better way to ship things. And Mexico doesn't have the rail network is a little underdeveloped. So those are geographic constraints. But I would probably point to geography more than anything. There's still huge opportunities, by the way. I met with a guy who has a factory in Mexico last week, and they make purses. And because they make their purses so close, it's only 3 days from where he is. It's 3 days. Leon is the leather capital of Mexico. It's 3 days to get to Texas. It means he's never out of stock. And the connections between your logistics and your Facebook ads are fascinating. So that means if he's never out of stock, then his Facebook ads never come down. Because if you run out of stock, you got to take down the ad. If you take down the ad, I don't understand these algorithms anymore. I haven't been in the online ads game in a long time, but they will punish you basically if you take down your ad and try to put it back up. It won't run as effectively as it would before. So being close to the United States is a big advantage. Labor costs are actually an advantage these days. Chinese labor is more expensive than Mexico. China per capita GDP is higher than Mexico, or at least in the hourly wage of a factory worker. But the quality is way higher in Asia still. That's what they say. So Mexico has a long ways to go to learn the skills. Mexico and other countries in Latin America, a long way to go to learn the skills of being. People don't go to China anymore for cheap labor. They go for the high quality, which is a total change from 20 years ago. Sure. Whoever has the mic, go ahead. I can't see.
Hello. My name is Aryan.
Raise your hand at least. Oh, I see you. Yeah.
My name is Aryan. I study business here. The main question I had was like, as your company's grown, how have you developed as a leader? Like, what have you kind of learned about like your leadership, and how has that changed as like your company scale has grown?
I've been through a lot as a leader, ups and downs. I would say I have a lot more confidence than I used to. I've been through with the team. I've been at Flexport the longest, obviously, but we've had a lot of turnover of team, and I think that's normal in a startup. Although we probably had more than our share, in a bad way in a lot of ways, but also one thing that I now believe is that it's my company, and I'm going to do things the way that I want to do them, and I won't apologize. And because when I allowed someone else to do it their way, and then 2 years later they don't work here anymore, and I'm still here stuck with their problem, and I didn't want to do it that way in the first place. And it's just like, I know 10 years from now I will still be at this company, so I'm therefore I want to own all of the decisions. I don't own all the decisions, but the big decisions, the things that I care about, we're going to just do it my way. I think a few years ago I'd have been scared to say that out loud, much less to do it. And if there's many companies in the world, it's not that bad that people leave the company, they go somewhere else. Nobody dies. They went to a better, they probably made more money is why they left. So that's probably the self-confidence piece of it all, like to be like, and that was very hard for me as an entrepreneur. Like I worked for my older brother doing a startup. In high school, I made pizza at Domino's. Those are kind of my two jobs that I've had. And so then for me now, if you look at my kind of leadership team that I've had over the years reporting to me, one of them was the CEO of Amazon.com, the retail division. I hired that guy. And I had the head of, you name it, department from like all these great companies. It was very hard for me as an entrepreneur to have the confidence to think that my idea was better. But then I watched how dumb that some of the decisions some of these people make were. And I'm like, oh, actually, I can be smarter than that. So I'm not always right, but I will be the one that's here 10 years living with the mistakes, and they may or may not. So yeah, I'd say that was self-confidence, which comes through trial and error and more humility than I'm exhibiting right now, probably. Back row. Oh, front row.
First off, hi, my name is Bria. I'm a data science major, and I am looking to explore, I guess, the applications of data science into climate tech specifically.
Yeah.
I had a point about your iron or the steaming conversation that we had earlier. I remember that I burned my prom dress senior year of high school with a
Exactly.
steamer.
It's always the most important moments.
Always the
the
most important
your
moment.
clothes.
Exactly. But so I'm sure that the act of shipping freight in and of itself is a very carbon extensive process. And you mentioned that Flexport kind of prioritizes humanitarian initiatives. So how are you finding, especially in this day and age, do you balance innovation and kind of improving Flexport's efficiency and so on and so forth with also prioritizing sustainability? So are there new technologies that you're exploring or adapting that help you do both? Or is it kind of like a one or the other? There's sacrifices that have to be made in both?
Yeah. There's fundamental improvements that need to be made at the physical assets layer to eliminate carbon emissions from freight, and we're not working on those. So, and frankly, I'm skeptical that these are going to come along in the time frame that people say it's required. We had nuclear cargo ships back in the 60s, but people don't really like the idea of a nuclear-powered ship showing up in their port, especially after we've seen these disasters like in Baltimore and last week in LA, a bunch of containers fell off of a ship. What we do, there's a couple things. One is you can measure it. You mentioned data science, so being able to calculate exactly what the carbon emissions are, or there's always an error bar on these things, but you get pretty good calculation. Measure it, and then reduce it. And so the easiest way to reduce things is switch from air freight to ocean freight, which means better planning, knowing your demand forecast for your inventory so that you don't run out of stock. So then when you run out of stock, you got to air freight the stuff in. Air freight is like 10 times more carbon intensive than ocean freight. So better planning, better algorithms for loading. So we see, if you look at all the containers in the world, even the inbound ones, they're only about 70% full. And so there's a huge opportunity that we do to play Tetris with the cargo and help companies fully load these containers. That's a win-win because both of these are win-wins. Air freight is way more expensive. It's easy to convince someone to switch to ocean if it'll work for their business model. And then you can get, 30% less freight means 30% less dollars spent. Those are both like low-hanging fruit that are all about data and algorithms, and those are things that we're doing every day, starting with measuring and then showing how we can reduce it. The physical assets layer, we don't own ships, and I mean, there's things that come along, like these guys want to put these giant tall pole with a sail on the ship. To me, that's not really progress. This back to the 1800s. You can do carbon neutral shipping if you're willing to use a clipper ship, but they just go really slow. And I think for me personally, and this is not a Flexport view, there's a lot of people at Flexport who may disagree with this, but for me, my personal view is that a much more pressing problem in the world is poverty. And I'm much more worried about people who don't have access to enough energy and enough money. And I think trade and logistics has a huge impact on that. And there will be environmental consequences for that. But that's my personal focus area and I think anyone who's lived in extreme poverty or been exposed to it or seen it, they will instantly say that they care much more about that than they do about their carbon emissions. So I think in some level, it's a bit of a luxury to worry about. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's like that's my personal view. I think there's a lot we can do to reduce emissions. I think they're really important. Some of this low-hanging fruit. But if you were to say, hey, we can't do any emissions and the world doesn't function anymore. And a lot of people will die.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you so much for coming out. I was curious how, as both the founder and CEO of the company, how you make company decisions based on where we are in the business cycle. So for example, now when the ISM is around 50 or maybe below versus when the economy's picking up and we cross 55 or 60?
Sorry, ISM, is this that's like the manufacturer sentiment index or something?
Yeah.
Oh man, I've never looked at that metric. I don't worry about like macro, those types of macro. I mean, I worry a lot about the macro stuff. I do follow is like tariffs and what's changed. What do we need? How do we need to change react to it? The price of freight, even day to day, it changes a lot, and that'll move some things in our decision making calculus for where we focus. But much more, they're pretty tactical. Our view is, global trade could shrink a lot, and it actually has shrunk. No, actually, containers into the U.S. are up 1% this year, surprisingly, despite all the tariffs. But it'll shift. So, for example, it's down 10% from China and up from rest of the world correspondingly. But it could go down 10%, 20% everywhere, and we're 0.1% of the market. And so, like, we can focus on what we can control and not worry that much about outside forces and what the Federal Reserve is doing with interest rates. I'm not saying these things don't matter, but I don't know what to do about it on a day-to-day basis. Whereas the tariffs change, we're like, all right, run it through run a query that shows all the customers who ship that product and how much this is going to cost them, and arm their account managers to call them all and make sure their dashboard's updated. And these are the types of things that we react to rather than like macro stuff that's less actionable.
Over there, Haley, who's the next? Who has the microphone? Okay, go.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you very much for your talk. I'm over here.
Oh, hi.
My name is Yuhan. I'm a EECS major, electrical engineering and computer science. And I'm really interested in the last mile problem. Growing up and brought up in China, I know how fast things move. And from my understanding, your company acquired Shopify's logistics. And I'm curious to see how you think of the last mile problem, how you position yourself compared to, for instance, Walmart or Amazon with their acquisition of Whole Foods. And how do you think advances in technology on AI and automation would change the playing field for newcomers in logistics?
Yeah, I mean, which part of China are you from?
Shanghai.
Cool. Yeah, in Shanghai and all of China, they're like way ahead on last mile, but in part because they have more lower cost labor that's willing to work, like ride a bicycle around and deliver stuff. And but we have DoorDash and this kind of, what do we call these, user generated or sharing economy? I forget what the term for these people today is. App-based delivery folks. I think that's probably a huge upswing in last mile. There's two main forms of tech. One is the mobile app in the hands of these types of folks, and two is robotics or drones. Maybe that's three things. Maybe those are separate. That are all here and moving really, really quickly and worth following. We are not building fleets or even the drivers. We're customers of those things. So we'll hand the cargo over, we'll hand the product over, and they deliver. But there's a lot to be done in terms of algorithms for deciding which vendor is the best, for creating route density, sort stations upstream of that. I think there's going to be a handful of winners that build the last mile networks. And clearly it's going to be DoorDash, probably Uber. Amazon has I think it's called Amazon Flex, and they're delivering these gray vans everywhere. And then there's a handful of other startups that are going to fight it out. So we're happy to work with whoever gives us good rates and on-time performance, et cetera, from that world. The one I'm most interested in is actually drone delivery. My friend's company is called Zipline. If you haven't been following it, Zipline's incredible, and they're live now in Dallas, Texas. I haven't been down since they went live a couple months ago, but you can go on the Zipline app and order anything in the Walmart catalog and anything from Chipotle. We'll get to your door in about 10 minutes from a drone. And today they have 20% of Dallas zip codes. I think by the end of the year, they'll have all of Dallas covered. And I don't know about you, but I would order a lot more Chipotle if it was the impulse buy and a drone would lower it down to my door in 10 minutes. And they'll probably add everybody else. I think that's very threatening if you're DoorDash. DoorDash is also founder, a friend of mine from Cal. So they'll probably end up adopting those kinds of tech. And DoorDash has lots of last mile robots and stuff like that too. I'm a little more skeptical if things have to drive on the side. I would have been skeptical of Zipline too if I didn't see it working. So.
Hi, Ryan. My name is Sonia. I'm a business student here. Okay. I was super curious about as you thought through building this product up to now innovating forward, how did you think about, there's different problems, there's different solutions to address. How did you develop conviction in the steps that you were taking, making sure you're using your resources efficiently, kind of deciphering between what the market and other people think and what you think? How did you think about building effectively?
We did not use resources efficiently. I want to clarify that. We wasted a lot of money making a lot of mistakes, which was bad. Don't do that. We had too much capital. He put up some of the stats of how much money we raised, and money came a little too easily. And there was a period where at Flexport, you just had money. And so if there was a problem, you'd go, let's just hire someone to solve the problem. And that was hugely stupid. Big mistakes were made, wasted a lot of money doing that. When we've done it well, it's by listening to customers or listening to frontline employees who are talking to these customers all day and building tech for those are kind of the users that we build for, is either our operators or our customers, or maybe it's the vendor. They'll tell you, what Flexport's become, I couldn't have imagined at the outset. My view was a very simple kind of TurboTax for importing. I had an idea of what the web application should look like, but not all the back-end processes, connectivity to the world's asset owners, logistics world like that. We had to learn by talking to people and listening. And but those are the two mantras of Y Combinator, right? Is talk to users and make something people want. And those are right. You just got to talk to the customer constantly and try to parse out what the problem is that they're having, and then figure out if your solution would work. Like that whiteboard example that I described was a good one.
Thank you.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much. I'm Junggeun, MBA at Haas. So last year, I challenged the logistics industry to build voice AI agent. So I just went to Auckland Port, knocked to the containers, and I was very shocked that I went through their on-premise software. Still, they're using 30 years ago software.
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, I feel like it was way much worse. So how did you tackle that problem? So I feel like people were in that legacy industry are not ready in their mindset. At the same time, they don't have API. Their infrastructure is not ready.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know back to 10 years ago as a 0 to 1 stage, how did you tackle that problem?
Great question. So you went to the Oakland port and you just knocked on the door and they let you in?
I just bought donuts and then, hey, this is your gift. Do you want to talk with me?
What did you bring them?
A donut.
Donuts. Yeah. All right. That's that is a great spirit, though. You just go down there and study the problem and see if you can get users to talk to you. We do have this problem. Still, is that there are no good APIs. Like you said, it's gotten much better. I would say it's about the same. They haven't changed that much. And I think Flexport's key to success is that we don't really. I think there are a lot of people have attempted to do similar things to what Flexport's doing over the last 20 years. A lot of people are still trying to do this, but a lot of them give up when tech doesn't solve the problem. And if there's no APIs, they like, I guess I can't do this, or maybe I'll. But we saw very early on, all you have to do is go in person to a warehouse where the containers arrive at and get unloaded, and you would see if you actually watch the workflow that they unload the container, and then they put it on a piece of paper and mark what happened, and then you're like, when does that paper get put on the web? Nah, that doesn't. It's just on this piece of paper that's in the warehouse. So if you saw that problem and you were just a pure technologist and you said, okay, I'm just here to build software, maybe you would try to build some optical character recognition software for the warehouse or something. Still a good idea, actually. Maybe you could do that. But we just said, all right, well, how can I call you to get the info? We were willing to apply humans to make phone calls, but and just like a traditional logistics company would, but we were not satisfied with that. And then we would come back and say, okay, now what do I need to do? So we've built software for warehouses. We've built software for trucking companies. ways to get data to and from these companies to get us accurate data. But in the beginning, we just manually did it. Or, for example, dispatching trucks to go to the port and pick it up. It used to take us, this stat's old, but it used to take us 42 minutes of labor for each truckload or each container arriving at the port. It was 42 minutes of labor to coordinate the truck to pick it up. And so we just did that. And then later we came and built a dispatcher app and mobile app for the drivers and eliminated that by having. So, but you start by just doing it manually, basically. Maybe AI can do a lot of these things. Voice agents for AI is a good category. There's some cool companies being built in this area that we use. We're using voice agents a lot to call these warehouses to get data from human beings.
Could you answer just one more question?
Sure.
If you had to tell your 20-year-old son, the person who is seeing the Campanile every day, something that you wish you'd known, what would you tell yourself?
Probably should get a job at Google 2020, 2002. Yeah, no, I don't know. I wouldn't want to go back and try again. I think I got very lucky along the way. Things worked out in my favor. But probably it's something I heard was the difference between who you are today. There's two things here. One, this is a quote, so I'm not sure that I believe it, but the difference between you are today and who you'll be in 5 years is almost entirely made up of the books that you read between now and then. So get curious, find good books. A really good book will probably set you off to go read a whole bunch of other good books. And then the counterpoint to that is it's also, you are kind of you're going to become the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And so pick your friends smartly, pick people who inspire you, pick people who, go make friends with people who you want to have a good role model. We all, you want to find people that you can learn from. And by the way, if you don't pick a good role model, you will subconsciously pick role models that are bad. You're going to have a role model. You can't avoid this. It's human nature. And so you be smart about who you're modeling. It's going to be your friends to some extent, but can be other people that you find out there. So find really good role models. Go read a lot. The smartest people in human history, including many of these people that should be your role models, have taken the time to write down their best ideas in books that you can read. It's a blessing, so don't take it for granted. Maybe that's a good place to end.